we're going to give a few more minutes before we get started. For those of you who are watching online, just know that we're waiting for a few more people to come in. For those of you who are present for the reception tonight, again, want to make sure that please feel free to grab something to eat. Please feel free to make sure that if you'd like something to drink, we have it all set off to the side. And I would like to remind you, for the sake of just how we do this, please make sure your phone is on vibrate or turned off, just because it'll make it easy if we can avoid any unwanted distractions. So appreciate that. We'll get started in about 5 more minutes. So for those of you who are tuning in, just know that we'll be with you shortly. Thanks. And also, while we're waiting to get started, please feel free, many of you already have your packets open, but please feel free to open them up, take a peek, start to look at them, just so that you can familiarize yourself. We're going to walk through that, and for those of you watching, we'll refer to that in just a moment. Welcome, Jeff. I'll get you settled. We're waiting for a few more minutes because there's a couple more people who might be coming in. I just want to say a word to those of you who are tuning in. A couple things to note. This is the 5th and final reception that we will be doing here at the Cathedral. So all week long, we have been meeting with people, gathering, walking through the historic work that we're taking part in preparation for the 100th anniversary of the Cathedral. Now, with that in mind, this is a new technology for us. So we're going to be speaking to the folks primarily here, but also kind of including you in to our living room here in Cress Hall. So behind me are the boards I'll be referring to, and I'll be referring to this particular brochure that we're using. Don't worry, we'll be able to explain that and share with you who are watching at home a little bit more about that and about how that ties into this project. Again, we're going to take just a couple more minutes before we get started. So again, last call, grab something to eat, grab something to drink. Make sure your chairs are rotated so that you're comfortable so you can see everything's going to be happening up here. And we want to just give you time to get yourself in place. And then once we get started, we'll just kind of keep moving through. If anybody does come, we'll just get them directed over and get them settled. So a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. get started now. So I'm going to just ask again, make sure your chairs are turned, make sure your phones are silent. And as we gather, I certainly want to welcome everybody here, our fifth and final reception, to discuss the Cathedral Centennial Campaign. For those of you watching, my name is Father Andrew, rector here at the Cathedral. I do want to say just a word about the format, about what we're going to do. So first, after we do the opening prayer and kind of get everybody settled into place, I'm going to invite Mr. Kent Phillips, a trustee of our parish, to come up. He's also the chair of the Centennial Campaign. Kent's going to come up. He's going to speak to us. And then when he's done, I'll speak about really how we got to this point in the campaign. At the conclusion of that, I'm going to invite Mr. Charles Resnick, an employee who works with Guidance in Giving, the company who was with us 9 years ago when we did a historic work to raise about $2 million, to which we applied to the school and also applied to work to renovate our boilers. When Charles is finished, then we're going to have an open question and answer period. And I'll try to repeat the questions so that those of you at home and those of you who are out there just can hear what the question is, and that way we can respond to it. Because that's also an opportunity for all of you to have your questions answered. But I ask that you hold all of your questions until the end. And the reason is we will do a pretty good job to try to get most of them covered through the course of the time. We filled the hall earlier today with the 1 o'clock. And so as this is the final reception that we have, just grateful that you're all here. Bottom of my heart, thankful for your time and your presence to learn more about what we're doing. So now we call upon the Holy Spirit. We call upon God's grace to be with us. I don't know what your day has had, good, bad, or otherwise, but we place all our concerns within the hands of God. We entrust all of our worries, all of our hopes, all of our joys. And we have a campaign prayer. It's on the back of your brochure. And just a word about this. This campaign prayer is largely borrowed from work that we did 9 years ago. And the architect for much of this was Father Lee. And so it just seemed fitting to reuse as much of it as we could on this second round. So folks, for those of you out there, if you would join me, together we say, Heavenly Father, you give us the gifts of faith, hope, and love. Lead our cathedral family to be faithful witnesses as we follow Jesus Christ, our King. Send your Holy Spirit upon us and empower us to live these gifts with peace and joy. May our sacrifices today help us to care for our cathedral family. Through study, prayer, and service, may we reach out to those in need and proclaim the good news. Through the intercession of Blessed Solanus Casey, unite our cathedral family in a spirit of charity and direct our work for the glory of your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, God forever and ever. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. This time I'd like to call up Kent to share his words.
Good evening, everyone, and I would really like to thank all of you for coming out. It's really nice to see everybody come out and be interested to hear about the projects that we would like to try and achieve through this campaign. And for all of you at home, thank you for joining us and showing your interest in finding out a little more about what we're trying to accomplish here. I'd also like to thank Father Andrew for the opportunity to work with him on this campaign. I'd like to thank Chancellor Wachter, who graciously agreed to be the lead gift chair. She's right back there, and has done a fantastic job of helping us get this campaign kick-started. Just briefly about myself, my wife Mary and I have been members of the Cathedral Parish for 33 years. I serve as a trustee, I am the Finance Council Chair, I'm on the Parish Council, and I've been asked to serve as the campaign chair for this capital campaign. Mary and I have also been blessed and had the good fortune to serve in many other roles and capacities during our 33 years here at the Cathedral. But I'd like to stop and talk just for a moment about why this Cathedral Centennial Campaign is so important. Let's start with the obvious. The cathedral is going to be 100 years old in 2027. The Centennial is an extraordinary event and provides us a unique opportunity to not only properly prepare the cathedral for this monumental occasion, but to also be a part of the generous legacy of our cathedral family. It provides us with an opportunity to work together to make sure the necessary repairs and upgrades and renovations are made to our church and grounds. The projects done now will ensure that we are not confronted with emergency and crisis situations in the future, which could prove to be very costly and hinder our ability to serve God's people. All the projects associated with this campaign are practical and necessary. Whether it's the parking lot and the stonework, the elevator, the lighting and sound, the air conditioning system, or the roof, they all need to be addressed. And we've been blessed with this most beautiful and holy place to worship. Collectively, we have an opportunity and a responsibility to make sure our cathedral remains up to date and in good working order. Our actions enable us, by example, to set the standard for good stewardship for the next generation and provides us a solid foundation as a parish to work from. Thus, it's extremely important that we raise the $2.1 million required to accomplish all of these projects. That is why, my friends, we are asking for your commitment, along with everyone else, so that we can reach our goals. And the one thing that I can absolutely assure you is that your gift will be applied efficiently and effectively in the execution of the projects associated with this campaign. One example and evidence of this can be found in how the boiler portion of the last campaign was executed. Upgrade versus replacement of our boilers provided great savings without compromising redundancy or efficiency, while extending the life of our boilers and saving us a great deal of money. Beyond the last campaign, as a trustee and a finance council chair, I have also witnessed the astute handling and application of parish funds by Father Andrew and his staff relative to parish operations. They have worked very hard and have a proven track record of exemplary performance. And based on this, I know they will do a stellar job of executing the projects funded by this campaign. And I want to just stop for a moment and tell a real brief story. Our finance director, Colleen Tura Wickland, sitting right over there, raise your hand, when she interviewed for the job, way back when, Father Ann, when she brought her resume in, it wasn't your normal standard resume that you would expect for a finance director. But after having interviewed her, Father Ann and I sat down at the table and talked, and there was something really special about Colleen. Her passion, her drive, and you could just tell that she was going to be successful at whatever she did. And so he said, let's do this, and take this chance. And that was truly a blessing from God, because not only is Colleen really, really good at her finance part of her job, but she's an outstanding project manager. And she's worked diligently with the Buildings and Grounds Committee, who's also done a great job for us to make sure that we stay ahead of things here. So we're very, very fortunate to have her and appreciate all the work that she's done and the Buildings and Grounds Committee to be able to keep our cathedral in the state that it is. And another item that is really, really important about this campaign is that we all be in it together. We need everyone to participate and prayerfully consider a sacrificial pledge over a 3-year, 36-month period in order for the campaign to be successful. And it's understood. We can't all give the same size gift, but we can make the same size sacrifice. We truly become one, as Jesus would want us to be, when as a community we can walk arm in arm, knowing that we did it together. And rest assured, every gift to the campaign, large or small, is vitally important and sincerely appreciated. I've known Father Andrew Ricci for 25 years, and I've never seen a priest or person who loved his parish and parish family more than Father Andrew. He works tirelessly, 24/7, 7 days a week, for our benefit. And I am so very grateful for Father Andrew's vision and leadership as our rector. And I am confident that together we can do this, and in doing so, make our parish and parish family more unified and stronger. We can and should do this for Father Andy, for our parish, and for each other. But most of all, we should do it for God. This is His house, which He's entrusted to us. And this gives us a chance to step up and ensure that our church and grounds are given the care and attention they need and deserve. I'd like to thank you in advance for your consideration and generous response to this most important endeavor. Thank you.
So I'd like to explain how we got here. It was 5 years ago, midnight mass. Here at the cathedral, we're getting ready, and Father Lee and I are vesting, and Father Lee looks at me and says, "Hey, happy birthday to the cathedral. She turns 90 tonight." What? Because this is the stuff that Father Lee would know. Yeah. Well, it began a train of thought. 90 years old, and started thinking about, well, what do we do when we hit the centennial? Because a place like a cathedral is a major location for history and meaning for a diocese. And you just look here in Crest Hall, there are all of these pictures of the bishops. There's all sorts of history that's rooted in this space and place over time. So my mind began to leap to how would we celebrate for a centennial? Things like all school class reunions, concerts throughout a whole year, special prayers, special masses, pilgrimages to the cathedral, to be able to do a beautiful display perhaps of all the relics that we have here at the cathedral, and to give people an opportunity to pray and reflect and draw deeper into their faith, and also into the history of the church here in northern Wisconsin. All of that's the fun part. But there was another train of thought that began, and it's going to be a 100-year-old building. 100-year-old buildings need serious, tender, loving care. So we began to pull a lot of people together. We referred to the Building and Grounds Committee, and they've been working tirelessly to vet out what are key projects that need to get done. We pulled in the Finance Council about the money we would need and how we would allocate resources. Parish Council, key members of our staff, key volunteers in the parish, and then resources from the larger community to give us real numbers and run these numbers down to see we need to give people a real sense of what's the cost to take care of this treasure that we have and set it up for the future. As we did that, two principles just leapt up to the surface. The first is what's urgent, like what needs to be taken care of for safety, security. What are the things that are really pressing concerns? That's the first thing. But then the second is, what are important things that we better attend to so they don't become big problems and big expenses? In other words, we want to anticipate the challenges before they become out of control expenses. So what's urgent, what's important, and we frame that. That led us then to 7 projects. Now, I want to just say a word. Would you all open your brochures? It's page 5. I want to explain something here. So first off, in just a moment, when I'm done speaking, Charles is going to come up. And for those of you who are watching, this is the packet we're talking about. Inside there's a brochure and some other information. This brochure, if you would like to get a copy at home about what we're talking about and how we're referring to this, I need you to please email our cathedralcentennial@gmail.com. I believe that's going to be flashing up through the memo line on the feed throughout the presentation tonight, but cathedralcentennial@gmail.com. If you email us, we'll gladly send you this so you can read about it and learn more. And there are many of you out there who I know have become a part of our extended family. So this is available to you, and that's what I'm going to be speaking to the folks about. Now, the projects at the top of the list in phase 1, clearly urgent, that we want to get knocked out next year. Start with the parking lot and the concrete work around the cathedral. Our parking lot is in desperate need, and you just need to take a good look when you go back out to your cars and you check out the blacktop, its structure. But we also have some real challenges with a lot of the concrete that is beginning to fail. If you come up the steps on Belknap Avenue, you'll see where rebar is coming through. If you look at the plaza, you'll see all sorts of places where that has failed completely. We have problems with the sidewalk in different places where it's crumbling. We need to address that. But furthermore, this would give us an opportunity to correct two big things that would allow for safety and access. Call your attention to the elevator door that we use for everybody who has special needs. Right now, that elevator door is a very steep slope relative to anybody who's trying to use a wheelchair. I had a wedding a couple weeks ago, and a guy in a wheelchair said, "Hey, Father, I'm glad you got a ramp, but if you want, you can hop in my wheelchair, wheel yourself up that thing, hit the button, and see how it works for you at that slope." And for those of you who've used that ramp, going up is one thing, going down is another, because if it gets wet and a little frost, a little cold in Superior climate, it's a little ski slope. And we have had people fall, and we got to correct that. So what we would do is, we would change this process up, and instead of it having coming down straight onto the fire lane, we do a switchback. And would extend the length and allow us to have a much safer ADA compliant grade that instead of emptying out onto the fire lane, it empties out into the nice flat area here in the front. Easier to maintain, safer, and a slope that is much more easy on anybody who needs that access into the elevator. In addition, there's a second thing. For those who try to park in the handicapped spaces that we have, and they have mobility issues, and they're driving, 8 months out of the year, they open their door into a snowbank or into mud because it's parallel parking on that side. What we would do is change that and extend the fire lane out and turn it into parallel parking. The good news is we can plow it. Did I say, thank you for catching that. It's been a long day. Diagonal parking, which would allow us to plow this and also add a couple more spaces that we currently have. And what's more, it will allow us further to maybe add some larger spaces for special vehicles that have wheelchair ramps and or access. In other words, it will increase the spaces, allow better access, and be safer for people in all seasons and climate. That's a particularly pressing issue that I keep seeing over and over again. I think about when we do funeral processions. I think about when we are trying to get people who really want to come into church, but they have access issues, and this would dramatically improve that situation for us. All of that's in phase one. Phase one also includes the lighting in the cathedral. The light system that we have was installed 20 years ago when the cathedral went through its enhancement and renovation. And LED technology was greatly limited at that time. It's come a long way. And what we found is that many of the fixtures that we currently have are slowly being phased out. They're not being made anymore. And so certain types of like halogen lamps, okay, they don't make them. So what we would do is take this as an opportunity to switch over to a safer, cooler, longer lasting, more energy efficient LED technology. That would be also the switch. And we're kind of pressed for time because as these lamps and bulbs burn out, it's getting harder and harder to find replacements. So we would switch the whole system, and that's where that particular part of phase one would also be included. We include our Catholic Services Appeal, because this year we will roll that into the campaign. The CSA will come back next year. And then, in addition, we've also added the cost for being able to run a capital campaign like this. Again, for utter transparency, that you see what the costs are to make all of this happen, to share our vision, explain how we get home, and talk about why we do what we do. That's all phase one. And it runs that $1,174,000, call it 1.2. $1.2 million. That would be phase one, essential things, urgent that we get on top of. Now, phases 2 and 3 are things that we've identified as important, but we'd like to get them scheduled. So let's talk about phase 2. We want to repair, reseal, and restore the exterior stonework. We have a sandstone facing on the cathedral. It's beautiful, but when water gets behind that, it hits the iron where the stone is affixed, it expands and contracts over the seasons, and it does this. These chips, maybe you've never seen them, but I tell you what, after tonight you can't not see them. We've got about 80 of them so far. And they start slowly, but what happens is you can tell. First you'll see the stonework, and then you'll start to see these tiny spider-like hairlines that'll be formed, and then you'll start to see the outline, and then you'll start to see the things start to move out, and then they drop. This one conveniently fell 2 weeks ago just for this presentation. But again, we have about 80 of them so far. We've inspected the building, taken a drone around the entire building, have photographed it, and been able to begin to identify, obviously, the big issues, but also where they're starting to form. And I would just invite you to take a look and go out next time you're walking in and out at daylight and see it. Because once you see it, you can't not. We want to get on top of this. We want to be able to prevent as much of the further weathering that can happen. This will always be a problem. We're always going to have to deal with it. But this is a good time to say we want to get ahead of the game, anticipate more of the issues, and get it sealed up. The next part is sound and video. Now for this, I get to look at you folks, because COVID changed the game. When we started live streaming on March 18th of 2020, our development director, Jessica, wave your hand, Jess, had her job description completely rewritten because we had to figure out from square one how to keep people connected when everything got shut down. And it was awful. 77 days, I was staring at that phone. And thank God we had the technology, but you have to imagine, I'm on one side of the altar, Jess is on the other side. We took a music stand, flattened it out, wobbly thing, put a couple of hymnals on it. She's got a little stand and she's balancing on the book, trying to keep the thing stable, because it's all we had. Now, we've learned a lot, and we've tried our best to be able to help not only the folks who are watching right now, and not only many of you who are tuning in during that crazy time. At the height of the lockdown, on Easter Day, 2020, 35,000 people watched the 8:30 morning mass. I was dead tired, and I just was looking into that screen. But 35,000 people, because what else did we have? It was our lifeline. And you know, I'm looking at Deacon Dan. I mean, it's one of those surreal experiences in the life of my priesthood. And yet to be able to be all alone in a space, and yet to know that there were people reaching out to us. And for those of you who've been with us for 2.5 years, for those of you this has been a great connection, because maybe you couldn't get to Mass, maybe there are health issues, mobility issues, work schedules, maybe it's weather that just drives you to distraction. The fact is that we've been able to do this. Well, now we have some opportunities to raise the game, because the sound system, the speakers in the cathedral are starting to fail. And as they fail, we're having more problems about how to get the sound out. And we have all sorts of blessings in the cathedral, but we have to upgrade the sound system. We did work before COVID with the guts, the electronics, but now we got to work on the speakers. Well, if we're going to have all of this cable pulled for speakers, we'd also pull video. So we would create an integrated system that would work far beyond the iPhones that we're using and be able to create something that has really a good sophistication at a much more reasonable price. Again, COVID advanced the technology and reduced the costs simultaneously. So we would take advantage of it. We'd have to do the work for our sound. We'd pull the video and create an integrated system that would do two key things. It would improve the sound in the church, but it would also improve the sound quality online because it would be integrated into the microphones. So what goes into the lapel mic, what goes in at the ambo or at the cantor mic would be heard effortlessly, no echo. So for people who are hearing impaired who are watching online, a dramatic improvement, but would still keep a close proximity because we'd have cameras that would be zoomed in to different places in the church. It'd be a powerful way for us to continue to provide access, but also enhance the sound in the church. That leads then to the elevator. Our elevator was installed in 1989. Works great. Hydraulics are good, the box is good, but the electronics are from 1989. They're not sustained anymore. Simply put, they don't make them. There's a few components left out on shelves, but the fact of the matter is, when these parts go down, we can't get replacements. So the cost here that we have, would be bringing us up to a modern electronic component system to operate the elevator. Finally, the air conditioning. The air conditioning units, there's 4 units, they're yoked in pairs, and one of the sets has failed. It failed a few years ago. So we're really operating in the cathedral at 50% of our air conditioning capacity. Now, the coolant on that system is R22, which we're told now is being phased out. And so when that system does, it's a 20-year-old system, mind you, it was installed during the enhancement. When that system fails, we're going to have to upgrade. So again, it's something that we want to put on the radar. If we can raise the money for it, we can get it fixed and installed at a time that makes sense for the life and cycle of the cathedral, and not find ourselves in emergency planning if the thing goes out right before summer starts and we haven't got a game plan. This would allow us to be proactive and prudent. That's phase 2. That's another $610,000 in those projects. Now again, we've run down most of these numbers with current contractors and vendors that we work with. And so these numbers are at least to give us a good sense and a good handle on where we are right now. The last issue is the roof. The cathedral roof is a series of interlocking clay tiles. And the fact is that, generally speaking, they do work pretty well, but they're individual clay tiles, fastened with fasteners that are 95 years old. So what happened was, we kind of were alerted to the gravity of what was coming. A few years ago, you liked the pun, didn't you? Thank you. Yeah. We were alerted to the problem pre-COVID when the bell tower clay tiles, which had been exposed to the most elements from the most directions, were seriously failing. They were falling from the bell tower to the upper story and then down to the ground. So we're finding clay tiles on the ground. Now, we find clay tiles on the ground almost every year because the nature of these things are, weather gets tough on them. We inspect the roof every year. We replace tile every year. We've got to fix it. But this began to clue in that when we looked at the top of the bell tower, it's hard to get to. And so we had to come up with a solution. And we went with a metal cap, metal roof. Here's why. If you look at much of the cathedral, it's already metalled. The whole back of the cathedral, the apses and the lower story, is all metal. So we were looking at what our options would be. We could take that upper story, because here's the other thing, folks. As the tiles had fallen, we had to repair the upper story, and we saw that there's a lot of loose tiles, and we're going to have a lot of problems coming down the road unless we make a plan. So we chose to say, okay, do we fix it as it is? Do we take all those clay tiles off, fix the sub-roof, and then bring all those tiles back up, refix them, secure them, and make it like it is? You could do it. It'd be very expensive. The labor and the location make this a lot higher than the $300,000+ we've got for a metal roof. 2 to 3 times higher. Now, the issue was we already have metal on a whole lot of this thing. So we were looking at being able to give people some concrete numbers to work with, to be able to say, here's what it would take to get us into something that at least would be at a base level, sturdy, practical, a lot easier to maintain, and that we can have, like we do every year, people up on it to inspect it, check it out, and look at it. This is definitely a project that is going to require us to roll up our sleeves and get into. But again, we wanted to share with you how to be proactive and anticipate what could be a very big problem in the years to come, before it becomes a big problem. These 3 phases, then, are all of our projects summed up, and that gets us to the $2.1 million. Now, something I need to share with you is that as we do each of these projects, we have an established process here at Cathedral for all of our work. Now, you folks can't see it, but all of you can. We put together a list, just top of mind issues for the last 10 years, work that we have knocked out and got completed here at the Cathedral. And it's an impressive list, along with the pictures that go with it. I invite you to check it out. I invite you to look at how we've been pretty darn good stewards of the money entrusted to us to get work done, to be able to create a space and keep up this space so that it can serve us and take care of us. But the process that we have, When we take these projects, first off, we've got our building and grounds, our finance people, and we have, wherever it's available, we do competitive bids. That's just standard diocesan policy, where we bring people together along a common scope of work, they look at it, they bid it, and then we have our bid committee review it. And we're able to say we want the best value. So sometimes that means that we really have to look at the whole project, but to do so to say, how do we take the money that we've raised and use it to the best quality for the good of the people who are using the cathedral? So we work that whole process through, and then when we say this is who we've chosen, that's when Bishop Powers then signs off, because he's going to want to know how many people have looked at this, how many people have reviewed it, what are your principles, what are your priorities, and how do you expect it to get done? And when he has that answer, then it's signed off and out we go. We're big on value. And then we continue to communicate it. Something that I just ran the numbers is that, twice a year here at the cathedral we do reports. We do a mid-year report and a state of the cathedral. It includes the finances, it includes some of the key things that we're working on, key projects, and we allow that to go out so that you stay informed. You know what our budgets are, you know how we came in each year with finances, you know the key elements that we've handled. We make sure that for transparency's sake, you know what's going on, you know what we're knocking out, and you know the timeline to do it. And that will continue with these big projects. We'll keep people informed. I like using the reports when the state of the cathedral and the mid-year, because it's in print, everybody sees the same information at about the same time. Because I know sometimes at Mass, what I say from the pulpit, it's like a game of telephone. And sometimes what I say changes, but I think as the people share it with those around them. This way we can always go back to, no, here's what it was, here's how it was written, here's what we said. And we can go back 10 years to be able to say, this is how we communicate, and we will continue to communicate. Now, that brings us then to this campaign. And in order to talk about that, it's important that we recognize that for 95 years so far, a whole lot of people have been making sacrifices. This church was built in 1927, and then the Great Depression hit. And people went through the Great Depression. They went through World War II. And after the big economic post-war boom, the city of Superior had some tough times in the 80s when all sorts of economies went sideways. The cathedral family hung in there. The cathedral church has remained steadfast. The community has been tight and been committed to serving people from a wide range of different backgrounds. And that's the beauty of having a cathedral family. But when I think about their sacrifices, it reminds me that, we're all called to make sacrifices, to be proactive stewards, to stretch the buck as far as we can, to get the best value, and to hang in there and keep just picking away at stuff. We get it done as we can, and we continue to take care of what we have. We take care of this cathedral so she can take care of us, for baptisms and weddings and funerals, for masses and prayers. We take care of this cathedral so that we have that house for our family, to gather and to pray and reach out. Now, I've been using the word sacrifice a lot. And you know what? It doesn't have any meaning until I'm willing to put it into practice. And folks, I've been praying on this in preparation for this campaign. And I can't ask anybody here or anybody in the extended family to even consider a sacrificial gift unless I'm willing to show by example. So after a lot of prayer, I'm offering 1 year's salary from the cathedral, which is $40,000 of my salary, to this campaign. It's my sacrifice. Now I want to make it clear, everybody's got their own math. And everybody's got to kind of sharpen the pencil and figure out, what's going on in their lives. And I did that. And I want to just be able to say that I love being here. I love being with all of you. I love being able to share with all of you the gift that we have here. That way I can at least say, I'm asking you to consider what that sacrifice would look like in your mathematics. What that sacrifice would look like with your schedules and structures and needs. Every day I thank God that I get to be the rector of the cathedral. I really do. 14 years now. And I am absolutely thrilled to be a part of this project, this community. I've been so overwhelmed over the years by the generosity and support of so many. I know that the only way this happens is when everybody works together. The only way this happens is when people shoulder to shoulder, side by side, join hands and say, let's do what we can. Great and small, as Ken said. Every gift matters. Every gift is crucial. Every gift allows us to, when we put it all together, be Cathedral and be that family, both present and extended, that allows us to continue to share the good news. I know that, we need gifts at every level, great and small. And I know that it only works when everybody does their part. So I'm asking you all to prayerfully consider making a sacrificial gift for this crucial work. And again, for those of you who'd like, you can always get a brochure from us. Just email us at cathedralcentennial@gmail.com. I want to thank you all for coming out and for your time. I'd like to now invite Charles to come on up.
Thank you, Father. Well, good evening, everyone, near and far. As Father mentioned earlier, my company that I work with is in Guidance and Giving. We serve the Catholic Church exclusively. One of the, not the most common question I get when I go out is, well, you work with the Catholic Church, but are you Catholic? I say, well, let me ask you a question. I'll preface it. I have 4 brothers and I have 4 sisters and 40 nieces and nephews. What do you think? There's no wise guy here tonight to say, oh, Mormon. No, I'm Catholic and I've been extraordinarily blessed. I really honestly don't know at this time how many great nieces and nephews I have, but you do see, near or far, and I have a lot of gray hair here, so I truly am blessed. So this is a privilege to do this job, to serve the church in this capacity, to travel around, to work with really great communities across this country. Every place I go, there's that core of people, and here it extends out with the volunteers and, as mentioned earlier, the closeness of this parish family. So, I was here almost a decade ago now, and I'm back. And you're wondering tonight, well, what exactly are you asking us? Well, let me get into that, and the answer is right in this brochure, which as mentioned earlier, we can send to you if you're interested. I also want to mention that we're going to post this online in the next few days, so you'll be able to see it there as well, okay? Okay, first off, just if you would, open the brochure up. I want to get you a little familiar with this, and I think you already are for the midsection, but it opens with a letter from Father giving some background history of this. Then the next step is the history in the making. What are we doing now? And this truly is historic, so I think that's an appropriate title there. If you turn the page here, where Father Andrew spent most of his time breaking down the phases of the campaign, and the associated costs are right there as well in the project's overview page on page 5. Then if you turn to the next page, you can actually see the rendering, which is right here. It's on the inside, and you've already noticed as you page through, this rendering is here as well, and actually, so is this. So everything in these boards we incorporated into the brochure, so you can take it home and look at it and say, better understand it, and also maybe ask your own questions about the process or any specifics, and we're glad to answer those. Sometimes we get great ideas doing this, and Colleen's shaking her head from putting this information out here. This is a lot of work behind this, but still, it's a proposal until it goes to, till it's finalized. So little input here and there can help tweak things and make it better, okay? Another way maybe you can be part of this. Okay, if you would, speaking of being part of this, turn the page to page 8. You'll see a picture of the bishop there, top and bottom, with some of the parishioners here. Here it says how you can get involved. And if you look down to the blueprint, the lighter blueprint, there's a 1, 2, 3. Okay? And the 1, 2, 3, I'll give each one word, boil it down to 3 P's. Pray, promote, and participate. Okay? So we are asking you to pray, not just for the campaign, but pray for the parish family, the extended parish family. Promote the campaign, be an ambassador for the campaign. And you took step 1 by coming here tonight to learn more. And I will ask you to take this brochure home with you and study it and become familiar with it so that you can share this information with others. The third thing we're asking you to do is participate in the form of a pledge and consider doing that over 3 years. Now we're going to flip the page in a minute, but before we do, I just want you to keep in mind a couple of things. If you look in there, it says on the next page, page 9, keep in mind 3 facets of parish giving. The first one is offertory. We do not want you to take away from the offertory because that is essential money for the operating budget of the parish. It keeps the lights on, keeps the water running, it keeps the boiler system with the right fuel and so forth. Okay, so it's critical. It helps the operations, the ministries, the staffing, and so on and so forth. A parish doesn't function without those essential monies. So we ask you to continue to support as generously as you have. Secondly, know that the Catholic service appeal, the bishop's annual appeal, it's a small portion of this, but it will be included for this year only. Okay? Next year it'll come back in its regular form. So keep that in mind when you're making your pledge. It's rolled in this year, but it comes back next. Then number 3, of course, is this campaign. And so now's the appropriate time, if you would, to turn to the next page. And if you haven't followed us and you're thinking, well, let me just look at this chart, just flip from the back of the brochure and you'll turn right on that page, those adjacent pages. We'll just talk about those before we get to your questions. You'll see on page 10 is the suggested gift plans, and these are suggested gift plans. You'll see that the range here goes from $4,000 to $250,000. And if you don't see what number you might have in mind on there, that's okay, because, if that's $1 million, we'll work with you, right? No, seriously, folks, whether you see yourself in this chart or not, whether you see yourself on an in-between number, we want you to give this prayerful thought. The campaign is about equal sacrifice, not equal-sized gifts from each person. It's about an equal sacrifice. Everybody's a part of it. For one person, 10, 20, 30, 40,000, 50,000 or more might be a sacrifice of 2, 3, 4, 5,000 for someone else. Okay? But together, everybody making that sacrifice is what makes it successful. And I'll say just one thing about sacrifices. I think as Catholics, we understand sacrifice much better because we understand the holy sacrifice of the Mass. We unite ourselves each time we go to Mass in that offering. And so when we think about this, we are making a sacrifice with others to join in, to help in the building up of the body of Christ and taking care of the church, the mother church here of the diocese. So as you look at these numbers, pray about it, think about it. I just a couple things on this chart. Notice that the first column is the total amount. The next column shows 10% down. So the chart is based on that model of 10% down. You would adjust your math if you're putting less down or more. Then what annual payments, quarterly payments, monthly or weekly sacrifices would be. So do give that prayerful thought. We don't ask you to make a decision tonight, but if you see yourself on this chart, right away you might think, or I'll ask you to consider, maybe I'm one step higher. Maybe the Lord's calling me to go a little higher. And I can say this, as Father said, I've been part of a couple campaigns myself, lengthier campaigns, 5-year commitments. So I kind of know what this is about. But I will say this from my own experience, I was blessed tremendously with what I did and sacrificed, and it actually came back to me in a totally unexpected way as an absolute gift just at the time I needed that. So trust in God, we can't outgive the goodness of God. On the next page there, we'll talk about a couple things, methods of pledging. Most people are going to pledge by writing a check each month. Of course, you can also go online and you can fill out the information there and make your sacrifice there. If you do that, make sure you turn in your pledge card. A couple other things I want you to consider as gift possibilities. These do not apply to everyone, but I feel it's very important to bring up. And that is, you may have stock that's owned for 1 year or longer that you can access. It's not tied up in an investment like a 401k and you're not retired, so you really can't. Or you don't have access for some reason or other at this time. If you make a gift from that stock being transferred directly to the parish for these projects, you would designate it, you have the potential to be able to write that off. Well, what's nice about that? Well, not only can maybe make a substantially larger gift than you even considered, or a down payment and make payments, you can potentially have a write-off on your taxes. Now, if you're going to do that, I suggest that you check with your advisor. Make sure that your situation allows for that, okay? Check with your CPA, check with whoever your finance person might be. The other thing I will mention is IRAs. You potentially can give from an IRA, particularly if you're age 70 and a half or older, you can give directly from your IRA in the form of a check to the parish. Well, how does that benefit? Well, in this case, you're not able to write it off as you would be in the case of a stock. However, if you have a minimum required distribution, that lowers your tax table if it's taken out of that. So consider that. And believe it or not, you can do that on a stock up to $100,000 per year. Okay? All right. And, as you're thinking about these, what your thought is, I do want you to know we do need those gifts across the board. And we've had gifts across the board, believe it or not, from $4,000 to $250,000 already. We're at just over 20 gifts, over $800,000 in pledges. So, yeah, a lot of grateful, approving nods. So, been blessed. We have a solid foundation, okay? We're getting close to that 40% mark. So now we're asking you, those people help lead the way. We're asking you to be leaders as well tonight. Not tonight make the decision, but to take this information home, pray about it, and then get back to us as soon as you're ready. Okay, thank you very much. Now the favorite part of our program, because we've heard each other's talks a few times now. This is the 5th time this week. We're going to allow you to ask your questions, so Father's going to come up and take the mic. If a question would come up that pertains to the building aspect, Father may handle it or someone else, or the campaign, I'll be more than happy to help and answer that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Father.
All right, I'm ready. Give me a question. Lynn.
It's looking like there's no stairs any longer. Is that the case?
So Lynn just asked the question about the stairs. One of the things, are you talking about the main stairs?
Yes.
So what we've done is, we currently have 3 different flights of stairs in the cathedral coming off of Belknap. It's a lot to shovel. And so we can't, and a lot of times when the storms come up, it's not even feasible, so we keep just the one in the center. The thought is, in this new arena, because we don't get a lot of traffic coming up from Belknap, that we would remove the stairs that were on the sides and just have one set of stairs, keeping the same basic format, but allowing that to be a much smaller, easy to shovel and maintain. And this is just an example to show roughly what that would look like. We had the artist at least give us a rendering so we could show what that would be. So we would remove all the concrete. I don't know if I'm in right now, but we would remove all of the concrete, re-excavate, re-pour, and then add one stairway instead of the three. Thank you. Others?
Is IRA contribution?
About IRA contributions.
IRA owner, age 70 and a half or over. Do you have to be 70 years old? I'm not 70 yet. So do I?
Well, you don't even look like you're 50, Diana, so there it is.
You have 40 years to go.
So I can't use my IRA.
Correct.
Okay. That answered my question.
You coming over
If
here?
you're a shade over 55, you may be able to, but it doesn't apply to everyone, and I'm not the expert on that. So if you would, talk to that person with your IRA, and you'll get that answer. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I slept through that class in the seminary, so I can't answer that for you, Diana. Other questions?
Are we gonna have less parking?
No, the parking will be roughly comparable. Here's where we've got a couple of things. In the design that we have, we hope to gain a couple more in the diagonal parking for handicap, which will be a real blessing for folks who struggle. They try to get here to church, and we want to create space for access. The rest of the parking should be pretty much of a wash. I'm looking at Colleen, and we've run it a bunch of different ways how we would do the parking so that there's good flow, ideally with a minimum amount of accidents. But we want to just be mindful of the fact that that's always a challenge. Thank you. Others? Oh, there we go.
When would you bid out and start the work?
When would we bid and start the work? Phase 1 starts right after the first of the year. We have created, it's over there in a pile, Northland Engineering created the design for the scope of work. We're in the process of tweaking that work right now. Again, the parking lot is crucial. Chancellor, that question, I think what we've decided is that we need to act on this, and we need to get this done as soon as possible. So what we'll do is we'll wait until Deacon Dan becomes Father Dan. But seriously, what we're looking at is as soon as school lets out. So we would take everything to bid, let the contractors who are interested be notified, let them see the scope of work, let them have a walk around, and then once they've done that, give them the timeline for when they need to submit their bid. We will review the bid with the process I shared earlier, and we would start as soon as school lets out, think June and into July of next year. Now the idea is we'd like to, for those of you who are watching, the Diocesan Wedding Anniversary Mass, which is a beautiful diocesan celebration, happens in mid-July. We'd like to have this done in June and the first part of July. And in order to do that, I've warned my brides that the cathedral will be a little sketchy for part of this while they're excavating and pouring. And it does change that our daily Mass schedule might either have to be relocated over to the school, or we'll direct people to other churches for daily Mass for those few weeks. We would work around, Jeff isn't here right now, but we would work around the funerals that would need to happen. But we would also make sure that the cathedral would be open on Saturdays and Sundays for the weekend Masses. If we have to, because certain areas aren't accessible, we would create a ramp so that people could still get into the cathedral if they can't get to where the elevator is. We'll try to keep everything open, but it will be an interesting time. But go to bid after the first of the year, have the work done June and July. That would be for the parking lot, and then we'll work on lighting and try to get that done. Again, part of this will be contingent upon the success of the campaign. We're off to a good start, as Charles mentioned, with over $800,000 pledged already by some of the initial gifts that we've been given. We've got a long ways to go, but certainly it's an exciting part to be there right now. Thank you. Other questions? Jeff?
Your elevators now that they were going to work on, are they going to be shut down during this?
Okay, so the elevator question, will they be shut down? Here's what will happen. We will try to get that work scheduled, again, pending the success of the campaign, but we would schedule that work, ideally for when we know there's nothing going on at the cathedral. And then what we would do is plan that so that they have their parts ready, their time scheduled, they come in, and we know that, okay, we're not doing anything in the cathedral these 2 days, work it around with the larger calendar so that the work gets done, is set, checked, and approved, and the elevator just keeps working for us. It might make sense to have the elevator work done when we know that parts of the construction would be off limits, but we haven't gotten that far yet. But we would coordinate the work pending, one, the success of the campaign, and how your pledges are redeemed. Because once people fulfill the pledge card, Charles will talk about that, we'll know roughly when we can anticipate when money will be coming in. That will allow us to know when we would want to take on work. And obviously, we've got a lot to deal with next year right away, so that will be the big thing that we want to swallow and get done. And then we would take on the work as we have the cash. We want to be good stewards. We want to nail it down as fast as possible. But the idea, Jeff, would be this. I should say something about the elevator. The people who inspect our elevator every month, tell us, look, Father, it's electronics. It's past its normal life expectancy. It could last you a few more years. It could fail tomorrow. So we're prepared if we have to. If something goes down, I'm looking at Colleen who's nodding at me, yes, that if the elevator goes down tomorrow, we make a phone call, we get the new parts, we pay that top dollar because we can't run the cathedral without it. However, if we can get it scheduled, then we would do that in a timely fashion that would work within basically the operation of the cathedral family.
And that's being done then by the same company?
So I'm glad you said that. Some of our work will go out for bid. Some of our work would be done by the contractors that are currently tied to it. So we would have our elevator company do the install because they're the ones who are going to be maintaining it. So not all of these projects would be bid if they're tied directly to our, we've got a long-standing relationship and they know this stuff. Because we would actually be paying more because they'd have to learn a whole new system. Yeah, good question. Thank you. Others? Lynn?
Since it's the Centennial, is there going to be like an ask for the larger diocese?
Great question. So the question was, since it's a centennial, will this be a diocesan campaign? Now the short answer was right now, no. Right now, this is work that we think we can do within our scope. But I'm glad you asked for 3 reasons. First, for those of you watching, for those of you who've been watching for 2.5 years, I will be asking you if you'd prayerfully consider. I hope that as an extended family member to the cathedral, this makes sense. I would hope that we've been in this together and we've been praying together, and I'm so glad that we've had that chance to be able to continue to share the good news. And so, Lynn, in addition to our cathedral family, I will be asking the extended family. Because there's a lot of people. On any given Sunday right now, we're still continuing to reach between 1,000 to 2,000 people every weekend. And that's amazing. It's extraordinary. And I'm grateful that we have that chance. So what we want to do is we want to start first with the people who directly benefit from the cathedral. Our own cathedral family members, our cathedral extended family members. And then what we will also do is we're going to reach out to our cathedral school alumni. And the reason is because the alumni prayed a lot in that church. Our kids are in this church every week. They're down in Crest Hall every day. They take music lessons right up there. And so this whole house is integrated into what we do as a school. So I would ask our alumni if they would also consider making a gift so that we can continue to enhance the whole part of what it means to be cathedral family. So those are the 3 groups: our cathedral family, our extended family, and our school family. The bishop knows all of this, obviously. He's walked through all of these projects, literally walked with us on all of it. And he knows. So one of the things that he's also going to watch is how we're doing. And if we're in a really a tough spot, then we'll talk about if we would go out. The fact is that COVID was tough on a lot of churches in the diocese and around the world. And so right now it's very hard to go to a lot of churches outside the diocese or outside of our parish and ask them to help us when, frankly, they're working hard just to keep their head above water. So we're not going to go down that road right away. But I'm glad you brought it up because this is our way to be good stewards. We benefit from this day in and day out. Jeanette?
The roof, is that gonna match the tin roof that was put on the tower?
So right now, the question was, if we go with this metal option, would it match? Right now, the metal on the bell tower matches the current metal that we have on the lower stories. It's all integrated. So on the lower story of the cathedral, on the lower story on both sides, and then on the apses, all of that metal. If you want to see what the cathedral looks like with all of that metal, come into the parking lot off of 14th Street. Come into the parking lot this way and take a good look. You'll see it all. And you'll kind of get a sense of what that metal on stone really looks like. So that metal is the same as what's on the bell tower. And so initially when we were looking, the metal option was a good option because it would tie everything in. They made that move long, long ago to start moving towards metal. And so this would just be a way to bring it all together. So that would be the plan. It would all be the same kind and style. Now, with that being said, once we get into that project, we will be open to listening. Some of the other receptions, we had people talking about, have we looked at composite materials, shingles, looked at the clay tiles? Are there ways and maybe techniques that we could do it more cost effectively? I guarantee we'll roll up our sleeves and dive in to see what will be the best value for the cathedral family that we can give, and then we'll hash it out. But I think that right now, to your point, the metal would be in harmony with the metal we have.
So the whole roof would be metal?
Yep.
So the cost for the tile, you said would be like 600,000 more. Is that in addition to the 300?
Think in excess of 750,000 to $1 million. It would be very steep. And those are just, we started to just look at the thing that we would be looking at is that right now it would be safe bet to be $600,000 to $700,000 without batting an eye. The hard part is labor, and that's a variable that we're not sure of because it is a unique kind of work. The fact is that I'm sharing this particular information with you as it's laid out here is because this would be considered the most cost-effective way to take care of the roof with a similar type of roofing that we already have on much of the cathedral. So it would at least be in harmony. It could go higher if we kept the clay tile. But right now, if you wanted what would be considered the most value-driven amount, this would be it. A lot will depend, frankly, on the success of our campaign. Thank you.
Speaking of value, I guess just curious, have you done any projections on just like the efficiency component? I mean, the lighting, obviously, I don't know if the stonework is impacting heating or anything like that. Are there any numbers or anecdotal evidence?
The stonework is.
That question.
The question, thank you. The question was, have we done any efficiency studies on the lights, the heating, and those kinds of values? We know that there'd be payback on the lights. LEDs, there's a jump from going from incandescents to LEDs. That would be sharp. And there's possibilities of receiving like focus on energy rebates. So that could be money that would be a direct benefit to the parish. As to the stone, this stuff, it's very interesting. So this is a sign of water damage. It doesn't impact the insulation as much, but what it does do is it can accelerate where more water damage can come in. So we want to get on top of that as quickly as possible. It's always going to be a problem. You're going to constantly be dealing with this. And so that would be something we'd want to just stay on so that we don't accelerate the water damage. It's not as much an insulation issue, but it's a water issue. Jeanette?
Those patches that were put on, that was like 19 years ago, right?
So the patches, there were two solutions 20 years ago in the enhancement. Some were what they call a Dutchman patch, where they cut out the part that had flaked off and then put a new piece of stone in. Those have held up. But in some places, they just filled in where the hole was, and some of those failed right away. Some of them are still clinging to the wall, but you can see immediately where the outline is of those patches. There's a new technique called an Edison patch that the stonemasons have been exploring with churches and stonework of this style. The company that we've been working with for so much of our cathedral, the school, the rectory, and parts of the church have been looking at those techniques because they would be a way to preserve the building, keep the beauty, but also be able to keep that integrity. Others?
Can you,
Oh. Yes, Diana?
When you are renovating the parking lot, so you said there might not be morning masses at the cathedral. We might have to go to the school or other churches. When you are doing the parking lot, there might not be enough spaces for people to park on Sunday. You do have masses on Sundays. So where do people park?
So the question is parking during the construction, wherever they can find a spot on the street. Seriously, we'll warn everybody. No, we'll warn everybody. It's an extraordinary time. We'll want to schedule it. We'll want to prepare it. We'll want to create access. And what will probably happen is that we'll work with the contractor to say, where are they doing the work? So that might shut off certain points of access. And we'll encourage people to come in through specific doors. And if we don't have access to the elevator, then we would have a specific ramp built so that people who did need the ramp could come in still and get in and out of the building. It will be a time that will require us to be very cooperative. And we are going to have to just work with the challenges of that moment. But we'll try to keep people informed each week so that they know what's going on and therefore can really make their plans accordingly. Yeah, thank you. Sherry?
Here's a weird one, but like now with all the supply and demand, is that gonna affect anything, do you think? Or?
So the question was supply and demand issues. Well, here's a couple of things we would want to share. The first is this. That's why a lot of these projects need to be scheduled out so that the necessary materials and supplies are on hand. That would be the first thing and the most crucial. That's the first thing. The second thing is we will bid the work, and you know, the word has gotten out. Our town is a small town, right? And so people know that we're looking to do concrete work, blacktop work. They're already lining that up. So we would start to get that going, and that work would happen. Some of these things that might require special materials, labor, and timing, we would want to get scheduled before they become a crisis.
or was there anything you wanted to highlight or talk about a little bit more from the previous projects?
Some people have asked, Charles's question about when we did the when we did the school's renovation. So, folks, we raised about $2 million. We completely renovated the exterior of the school. Tuck pointing, we did all of the new windows. We took care of that glass block infill. We kept the building dry and warm, and we succeeded. In addition to that, we said that we were going to go and take care of our boilers. And so we put together in the original proposal, actually it's this. This is what the original brochure looked like 9 years ago. And in that brochure, we said we were going to try to raise $377,000 to abate the asbestos in the boiler room, to put new controls in the school, and then to put in 2 new boilers to replace our boilers. We abated the boiler room. We put in the new controls. But when we abated all of the asbestos, there's a big asbestos cap over the boilers. The inspectors saw that the boilers, which are built with rivets, were in perfect shape. We maintained those boilers annually with a high level of care and scrutiny, and that paid off. The boilers are fine. The boilers work great. So what we were able to do was, rather than buy new boilers, we put in a low fire heating element in one of the boilers, and we kept them running. And so we were able to upgrade without having to replace. We have 2 boilers in there, we alternate. And so we have this redundancy built in. Building's great, it's plenty warm, and we're allowing ourselves to be able to stay up to date with that. So one of the things that we were able to do was stretch that dollar that was raised, and it allowed us to really leverage the time and the cost. Thanks for bringing that up, Charles. All right, I'd like to invite Charles to come up to have some final comments about the campaign, and then I'll close with a prayer.
Okay, the last thing I just want to do is quickly go over the pledge card with you. It seems self-explanatory, but it's pretty important because we want you to check the proper boxes so that we know what your full intent is. I will say this just to quickly or briefly follow up with what Father said there. In terms of the projects that you did last time, and that's true of the Centennial or the previous campaign that you had as well, they took the monies, they not only used them frugally, they did what they said they were going to do. So if you looked at this brochure and here's the lineup, tick, 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 tick down there, that's exactly what they did in using the money wisely. In my conversations with the parish leadership here, I told them one of the most important things you did was be faithful to what you said you can do. And they do have a track record of doing exactly what they said they're going to do and accomplishing it in the most economical way. That, to me, is key because of the trust factor and the transparency as well. So rest assured that whatever you give to this will be solely dedicated for these projects to continue to beautify and keep up the cathedral here. Okay, so if you would, look at the pledge card here. I can even hold it up for the folks online here, and you can see. But what it looks like, the left-hand column, or the left side of the card, I should say, there's a place for your name and address. If it's not there, or it's not proper, including the phone number, please update that so the parish office has that information. Secondly, then it says total pledge, total down payment, and what the balance is. I mentioned earlier, you do not have to put a 10% down payment. You don't need to put a down payment. If you can put more of a down payment, 20 or 30% even, that certainly is helpful towards achieving the projects more quickly and more economically. So consider a down payment, but whatever you decide, just get out the calculator if it's different than 10%, and you'll see what those numbers are for you. Next, the middle section. There's 4 boxes there, and we ask you to please check one of those boxes. Monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, or annual. Why would you check that box? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is, we're going to send out reminders starting in January, okay? So they'll know how you want your reminders sent. And a statement that shows, here's what's the balance. By the way, these are not legally binding pledges, okay? But if you tell us what you want, if you're telling us how you want to dedicate this on what timeline, that's very helpful as well in regards to the parish planning, so that when they look at the cash flow, that projection, they can figure, okay, we'll be about here at this point, okay? So that's very helpful. And then initial or sign on the dotted line here, again, it's a good faith effort, your good intentions. It's not something that's legally binding. Occasionally I have someone, what if the Lord takes me home? Well, no one's left to necessary to fulfill this, okay? Okay, the next portion here on the far right column, there are a few boxes there. One is for stock. If you're interested in stock, if you're interested in doing an IRA, you can do it that way. Check that. And before you do either one of those and make a move, unless you're a pro at this, of course you'll need information from the parish anyway. So please contact us, turn your pledge card in, check that box, and either myself or Jessica will get back to you. The next box is EFT. So you can do this online, credit or debit. And if you do that, also fill out the pledge card. Again, that helps us know what your plan is, because even though you might fill out electronically, the full parameters of what your intentions is not always clear from what we get or the parish gets with the information back. So please fill out the pledge card. You can even turn the pledge card in and before you fill it out online, okay? But of course, don't forget to do that. Then include the parish in your will. If you would please, consider doing that. And if you're here tonight, you've already done it, you haven't told the parish, let the parish office know. Talk to Jessica in there so that they're aware of it. It's something everybody, I would hope, consider, because it can do great things for the parish and help lay some of these costs. So anyway, so that's important. You know, this building, it's probably $75, $100 million more if you count all the artwork. It's truly a treasure. So to be able to invest $1 million now, instead of if you let it go, and I just know from experience where it could be 5 or 10 million down the road, very important to tackle. So I'm asking you then to please go home, take this with you, and really pray about it. And as soon as you know, bring the card with you. If it's this weekend, please do so. But because as Catholics, we have the rule of the novena, we'll certainly give you a full 9 days. And if you still don't know, okay? If you still don't know, well, that's okay. But if there's anything that's blocking your decision, information, call the office and let us know. Get us an answer to your question. Well, the saints won't let you down. Choose your saint. My favorite happens to be St. Joseph. I know there's a history with that name in this parish. But if you do pray, you'll get that answer. Don't forget to turn in the pledge card. And we're asking you to help get us to the $1 million first, right? And then beyond. And you're going to help that in 2 ways. You'll help us get there. You'll help us momentum-wise. And you're going to inspire other people. When they hear that, we're going to announce, not this weekend, the following weekend, where we're at. Even $800,000 is quite a bit, but please do that. Help be leaders in this campaign. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles.
I'd like to close with a prayer. Just take a moment, wherever you've been in this day, whatever you dealt with this day, for the blessings, for the burdens, we call to mind that our lives are in the hands of God. And all of our blessings come from God. We ask the Lord for the strength we need, the grace we need to shine. We do this together, and Jesus gave us the prayer, and so we say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. To all of you here, thank you for coming. To all of you on our extended family, thank you for watching. God bless you all. As we're closing down the live stream, and we are here if anybody has any extra questions.